All right, sweet. Let's just maybe open up with a prayer. And then maybe after that, Zach, would you mind closing those doors when we're done here? Lord, thank you so much for missions trips. And as we continue to have our goal for 2021 is to have a missions trip, first of all, especially in this crazy year. And we just pray, God, for your blessing and your favor as we move forward and as we make decisions and all of those things. God, we pray for your wisdom and safety in your name. Amen. Never mind. Someone else did that for us. Thank you. If you're joining us online, we're just going to record this meeting. If you have any questions, feel free to please contact me afterwards or at any time. I'm actually leaving for vacation tomorrow, but you can still reach me via text or cell. I just might not respond as quickly as normal. So let's just go through a couple things real quick. I'm going to have, Jack, would you pass that out to everybody? So let's just let's just get into it, okay, because there's no point just running around. Most likely what we're looking at for, and this particular meeting is for the India and the Baja trip, and now obviously I've contacted most of you. If you got a text, great, but most likely what we're looking at is the India trip is most likely not going to happen for 2021. And instead of waiting, I want to just maybe pull the plug so that we can start planning for what's a more realistic opportunity and options for us. Just to give you the reason why, India requires you to do a 2-week quarantine when you go in. So it just doesn't make sense. Even if it were 1 week, it wouldn't make sense to raise all of that money and then do a missions trip that's your quarantine for most of it. Could that change? Absolutely, it could change. But we're planning a missions trip and fundraising, so we don't really want to wait till the last minute to see if a country opens up. Baja is open. People are going to Baja. There's Mexico, if you want the country. And that trip is $1,600. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you guys about today. Especially those students, if you're watching online later or if you're here, that's kind of a bummer, right? You're hoping for India. We've been pushing that direction for a while. So I do want to apologize because I know that for you guys, that's something you've really been looking forward to. You're really excited about that. So I apologize. It's kind of out of our hands at this point. We could wait, but I think, just with all the details, it wouldn't make sense to wait. Yeah, and if you Google that, CDC and all that stuff, or not the CDC, but the travel, what's the websites, you guys know? Yeah, the travel.gov, whatever you're looking at, India's, kind of rated up there. I think if last time I checked the COVID numbers, India's like next to the United States for highest numbers. Yeah. Yeah, no, so there's, and for the live stream, just there's going to be some conversation happening. You might not catch all that. I'll try to repeat. If there's questions later, I'll try to repeat. The reason I'm using a microphone is so that our live stream can catch the audio. Otherwise, it would just be like, anyways, so, yeah, there's just some things that this year, it's not looking like there's many international trip options. But, Mexico is one of those options that it is open right now. We will talk a little bit later about what if. We'll talk through some of those things. But that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So, yeah, at this point, my goal is to have a missions trip in 2021. That's my goal. And hopefully that's also your goal. And I'll be honest, location is something, I think as a young person, that is very much important, that you're driven by location. This is where God asked me to go. Going on 10 plus missions trips, I've experienced God powerfully everywhere I've went. Whether, Jen, we went to Red Lake, that was maybe one of our first ones as a youth group. Powerful, awesome opportunity. And I've also been to Africa. I've been to Central America. Everywhere I go, God meets us in just an amazing way. There's going to be a bunch of mission trips scrolling on the screen. I apologize if you can't see that on the live stream. But I'll go through a couple of what I think are some good options and what we should start working towards, and then we'll just maybe have some questions and Q&A time. 9 minutes already? Maybe we started a little bit late. That's going by quick. So I had Jack, thank you for passing out those sheets. That information is the Baja information, just a quick. You can download that exact form for any missions trip that you see on the screen. That'll give you just a little bit more information. However, I will say on this particular sheet, there is the deadline. That's been changed, this first one. So if you go online and get this for any mission trip, that's going to say something in November. Bobby is gracious, and he extended that for, it's COVID. Everything's just getting extended. And so December 18th is the deadline to register and pay the $200 deposit. So we'll talk through that here too. If you're for some reason you take a picture and it's just not working, let me know, and I'll screenshot you guys, and I'll send that to you guys, the real. I can do it actually right now if you want, but and it doesn't matter. I can airdrop and you get the good quality one. Here you go, Zach. You can work on that. I'll send that to you. See him pop up. Oh, look, Kessie. Look at all that. Here's a poop emoji. No, I'm just kidding. Every now and then I'll open up my airdrop and just see who's there and just send them some random pictures. Youth pastor problems. So, yeah, the deadline, December 18th. Is that what it says there? And he usually targets a Friday for his deadlines. So what we like to do, is try to get it. He gives us that deadline so that we can get that stuff sent in ahead of time. So right now, the plan is India is most likely off the table. And what I'd like to talk about, you guys have the sheets in your hands. What I'd like to talk about is us, which was kind of the original plan, was to do a Baja trip. And this is what I would just encourage you guys. You could technically, as a student, sign up for any trip. Obviously, what the trips are listed, some of those might not be available, just depending on what the status of the country is and if Bobby has a leader for that trip. So students could sign up for whatever trip, whether it's Cambodia or one of those things. But if a leader's not going, Bobby's going to be like, well, we can't make that work. So. Totally. So I believe, I can ask Bobby that question. I don't want to just make up something. Oh, sure. I don't know how all of the details works of flying into Baja, if that's just not an option to fly into. I'm sure it is, but I'll have to ask Bobby that question and get back to you, why we would fly then drive across. Yeah. Yeah, I'll ask Bobby that question. It might be so the organization we're working with, it might be something where they have like a base and then they require us to meet there and then drive over. So that will be something. So like Student Reach is the organization. So, we obviously work with Bobby, and then Bobby works with, so he's kind of like a middleman in a sense. If that's a negative term, I apologize, Bobby, if you're watching. He's like the middleman, right? So he's working with organizations, and then we're communicating with him. So it might be something that Student Reach is saying, this is the way you have to do it in order to do a trip with us. So I will verify that question. Let me write that down. Why not fly into Baja? Is that kind of the question? Sure. Totally. If we're worrying about getting killed or kidnapped, I did get my purple belt recently, so I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We got some wrestlers. Jack is our most intimidating one, so he's going to protect us. So hopefully that makes you feel a little better. Anyways, so yeah, we have, if you didn't hear the question, we're going to look into, is it possible to fly into Baja rather than fly into San Diego and then drive? So we'll look into that. So I've also, you'll see some options here. So this is what my main goal for this meeting is talking about. Okay, if India is not an option, what I think would be cool is if we all, as a church, we have like 4 or 5 adults from our church going to Baja, and if international options aren't available, but Mexico, technically an international trip. What I'd like to do is possibly consider doing a Baja trip and having our church and youth do that. Yes, so, yeah, I would be planning on going on that. Pam would also be going on that. So it'll be basically a youth mission trip and, it's a New Life mission trip, basically what it is. Baja is one of those trips, if I could just give you a little commercial. You're building a house for a family in need. And whenever people ask me, like, what are you doing in India? It's harder to answer that question, right? It's harder to say, well, we're going to work in kids programs. We're going to maybe do some prayer hikes, And I would say for teenagers especially, when we're thinking about where should I go, God, and we think China, Africa, India, and sometimes we overlook some of the places that are local, and the need that is in Baja, Mexico is great, and it's also one of those things that there's not a lot of opportunities that you get to build a house for someone in need and meet that family, hand the keys to them, and you can also, buy them clothes or provisions for the house. It's an amazing opportunity that I think oftentimes gets maybe overlooked because it's Mexico versus China or whatever the location is. I think Baja is a great mission trip, especially if it's your first mission trip. They say it's a great first-time mission trip because it's very hands-on, very hands-on. So when you're done, if you've ever done house projects, parents, right? If you've ever done projects, as soon as you're done, most of the time you're very proud, depending on how well you did on the project, right? You're like, whew, I got to redo that one. But there is definitely a sense of accomplishment when you build a home for a family in need. When you go to India, or any mission trip, sometimes there's not an obvious goal, or when you get to the end, you're like, this is what we did, this is what we accomplished, this is how many school assemblies we did. Like in Central America, you do a lot of that. This is how many school assemblies we did. This is how many kids we reached. You don't necessarily have that when you go on an India trip. It's a lot more like, this is how God spoke to me. This is where I struggled a lot, and I really had to just dig deep spiritually. In a sense, it's deeper spiritually, but Baja is one of those trips where it's like, wow, this is what we did, and it was awesome. It's very easy to explain. So there will also obviously be, with any mission trip, there's some other things that are involved. It's not just building a house. There'll be some kids ministry. There'll be some other things involved with that. That's the main thing with the Baja trip. And at the cost of $1,600, you're not going to find an international trip that at that price through AIM. If you want to do all the flights and all that, you could definitely do that, probably get there cheaper. I would say good luck, especially leading a trip. But that's about as cheap as you can get. Even if you look at some of the stateside trips, I'm not going to include Alaska in that because even though it's a stateside, it's different. Atlanta, that's a $1,300 trip. So a comparison from Atlanta to Baja, Mexico, it's a $300 difference, but you're experiencing a different culture and things, which that is something to be said for that. Even I've gone on stateside trips, and I'm like, I'm in a different country, I feel like. We went to Boston. We actually went to Lynn, Massachusetts. They advertised Boston, but we went to Boston for one day. We spent most of our time in Lynn, and a lot of the families that we ministered to were first time Hispanic speaking families. Their parents didn't speak English, and they'd send their kids to our little outreaches, and the kids would speak English, but the parents, when we knocked on the door, it was crazy. I was like, man, this is really kind of unique to experience in the United States. But anyways, so that's kind of the entire meeting in a gist is I'd like to see us, and what I'd like to do is do a Baja trip. There are definitely some other options, and we can talk about that, but I think Baja is a great option, and that's what I'd like to talk about. So I'll maybe just pose a couple questions that I just thought you guys might ask, and then if you have more questions after that, let's talk through that. First of all, just to repeat, is India an option this year? Most likely not. So I say most likely because could it possibly things change? Absolutely, but right now I'm not planning on doing that just because with quarantines and all that, it doesn't make it worth it. Can I get a refund? Yes, you can get a refund if Like even from last year, if you have money invested in last year, if you want to get a refund, you absolutely can, but you need to do it by the end of the year. Because how AIM works is once things move to the next year, it's like their bookkeeping type stuff, things kind of get locked in. So if you want to get a refund for the money you have invested on the India trip or even the Baja trip, you can do that. Because at this point, most people vouchered their funds for 2021, and that's still obviously there right now, but if you want to get a refund, you can do that. So for example, me and Casey we were both planning on going, and so I vouchered my trip because I'm planning on doing a missions trip in 2021. Casey, we're just not sure where she will be at, if she's pregnant. That's makes it a little bit more difficult. No announcements, but anything can happen. You guys know how it is. So, no, she's not pregnant that I know of. So we had hers refunded because we just weren't sure. So that's just what we did. You can do it however you want. Another question I thought of is, what if Mexico changes their rules and the trip has to be canceled? It kind of happens like it did this year. You voucher for, we're just going to continue to voucher your trips. You can do the same. We'll step into the same process for 2022. You understand what I'm saying? So that's a question I had. Totally. Right. So, I see what you're saying. Sure, I see what you're saying. Right, correct. So the question was, Wyatt, whoever signs up for India, I'll just repeat it just so I'm hearing you correctly. Wyatt signs up for India, he has X amount of dollars planned, and he wants to do a mission trip in 2021, correct? And so he starts going in planning, let's just say he's going on the Baja trip, and then Baja gets canceled, right? What happens to his money? Yes, totally, yes, absolutely. All of your money, if you're in 2020, if you were planning on a 2020 summer missions trip, and you voucher that for 2021, I know it starts to get a little confusing how we explain it, you're starting to roll over. All of your money is going to roll over, yes, to 2022, yes. $200 deposit, that's a great question. I think I have that coming up next. So here's what it looks like. When I do the math, basically what happens is you're losing $100. That's how it factored out. So if you were planning on going on a 2020 trip, you should have got a luggage, you should have got some books, and you should have got a T-shirt. Baja team, Val, I think your T-shirts are in the office. I don't know if you picked your T-shirts up yet. Pam just has them sitting there. But those are the things you should have got. You don't have to pay for those again. So you have the $200 non-refundable deposit, that they have at the beginning. So everybody has to still pay a $200 non-refundable deposit, even if you were doing a 2020 trip and you're signing up for 2021. You still have to do a non-refundable deposit. What they're going to do is they're going to give you $100 on that last payment to cover the bag, the books, and the things. So what you end up losing is $100. That's just, we all kind of had to eat that. I don't know, I'd have to ask Bobby, there was some fees that they had that they just couldn't. Technically it was non-refundable, so I do appreciate that he's not making us pay again for the baggage and the T-shirt. Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Right. Sure. Yeah. Totally. Sure. Where that money went. So we went on a training. So there's a... Totally. If you want, I'll give you Bobby's number and you can talk to him. Totally. I'm fine doing that. What Bobby told me was they're going to give us $100 for the stuff that we've already spent our money on. There's some training that was involved. I don't know where all of the cost goes. Bobby's a missionary, and he doesn't do this to make money. So I hear you. I can't answer those questions right now, so I'll give you Bobby's contact, and you can totally talk to him. Totally. Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's understandable. So the question is, what happened to the $100 that you're losing? That's a good question, and it's a fair question. Mm-hmm. Do you just keep losing $100? Yeah, for sure. That's a very good question, and you can either talk to Bobby or I don't mind asking Bobby that question, but so that's fine by me. If I'm going to talk to him, I might as well just add it. I always send him a ton of questions. Cool. And maybe it's something that they had to, maybe they lost $100. I don't know what it was. I don't know how it all comes together, but that's definitely still a good question. So those are some of the main things I just thought through. Is there any other questions that you guys have? I know there is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, yes. Yes, totally. There are other groups going, like, I'd have to double check with Bobby to get those for sure numbers. Any AIM trip is technically open to anybody really that wants to go. Yes and no. They've built like 6 houses before. So you don't want to have, right, you don't want to have like, okay, 10 people are going to build a house. Oh, now we have 20. They're going to build the same. So what they do is they have, student reach is, they have a number that says, okay, like, this is how many people we want to build a house. So there's been times where they've had hundreds of people go on mission trips. So they're like, okay, let's build 7, 8 houses. So how that all works, I don't know that side of the student reach thing, but there are other people going. Like Val, you can maybe speak to this. You've probably met some of the other teams that were going. Okay, so there was like 4, maybe more other people from other churches. And since they're adding on it, since it's technically rolling over, more people could come on. The same way more students, more adults from our church could sign up, the same could happen across our state. So I think what Bobby told me was at the way it's kind of looking now, if we switch to Baja, it's looking like we're probably going to build 2 houses because that's... Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Student Reach is great because, like, they do this every summer, and, like, they have a system, like, and this is not like an American house, obviously. It's a little bit different, but, like, they build a house in a week. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. But they do have a system, and they have a number that says, this is about how many people we want to build a house. And we don't want, the same way, like, you're setting up for an event, sometimes having more people is more of a pain, so, because it's hard to figure that out. Yeah. Yep, 48-hour, yep. Separate. Totally, yes. Mm-hmm. So, let me look at that real quick. So if you were going to do, like, so if the same person signing up for Baja wanted to do 48 hours, is that the question? Yes. Yep. Yes, totally. So you could totally sign up. The 48-hour trip, that's like kind of I think they were planning. Oh, that is where the complication is going to be. They try to target all of those trips in June. Now, there's some trips that, like, we're the only church going, so sometimes we're like, hey, Bobby, can we talk about different dates and stuff like that? But some of these are kind of set in stone. For sure. I was actually talking to Axel about doing a second option and possibly one for younger kids. So, yeah, so those all Minnesota trips, and I would probably include Milwaukee in there, even though that's not Minnesota. I believe all of these top 4, that younger kids can sign up for those if they want to. So that's something we haven't done before. I think is a great option. You know, I've heard it from another youth pastor. He told me, you know, with junior hires, I just don't like to go more than like 6 or 7 hours. I don't know what his number was, but it's still a great opportunity to get kids experiencing missions at a younger age. That's also not like, hey, I'm sending my 7th grader to, you know, Zimbabwe, right? Like that's just like usually not on the table. But those are options that are definitely open. So even if it's a different kid, you know, a lot of you guys have younger kids. If they want to go on some of those Minnesota trips, those are open. So ages for the Baja trip, I believe most international and up 15. I'd have to double check. Sometimes Bobby's like, oh, you know, that one 13 or 14, but I believe most international trips 15 and up. So, do you have a question, Bryn? Or are you just playing with your hair? She's just playing with her hair. Okay, that's fine. Okay, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Uh-huh. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So the question was, if coronavirus continues on throughout the year, are there going to be kids going to be wearing masks? Are they going to be social distancing? I'd like to say yes, right? I don't. It's hard to know what that's going to look like, but yes, you know, if that's what we need to do, if kids need to mask up, if we need to social distance, that's something I think we could easily accommodate for. And even sleeping arrangements. Nobody should be sleeping that close to each other, you know? And I know, like, you're like, well, you don't know, like, no, like, nobody should be sleeping that close to each other. So that's also true, yes. Camp and NYC, you know, we have 2 beds and we put 4 in each room, so I get it. So, yeah. But that's something we could accommodate for. That shouldn't be a problem, you know? Now, bunks, that's where it gets a little complicated. Is the top bunk 6 feet apart? You know, who knows? Is he breathing? I don't know. But, so, let's hope so. Let's hope he's breathing. Yeah, that's good. So, any other questions at this point? Val? I would love that, and sign me up to lead that trip if there's an Israel trip, right, Mindy? Mindy doesn't want to go. Yeah, that's a great question. They call it Holy Lands trips. It's on my bucket list. I don't know if it would be a missions trip or if it would be just like a go, you know. You might have a lot more people sign up if we're like, hey, guys, it's not a missions trip. They're like, it's a vacation. Yeah, let's sign me up for that. So that's a great question. Totally. I think a lot of people would be interested in a trip like that. Obviously, I think a Holy Lands trip starts to get over $3,000. You start seeing these missions trip costs; those are pretty cheap. Working with an organization, you know, obviously any individual could probably get there cheaper, but when you start factoring in the meals and all that, I think a Holy Land trip is anywhere from 3 to 5, depending on which organization you go with. But there's a lot of organizations that do it. You could obviously do that yourself, but it would be cool to do that as a church. A Holy Land trip would be cool. The year I graduated from North Central, the year after that, they started requiring students with Bible degrees. That was like part of your, you know, whatever the word is, your payments or whatever. And I was so bummed. I was like, seriously? Also, when I graduated from elementary school, they got a new playground. So I just was constantly just being lost. Yeah, it was hurt. I just felt like they were waiting for me to leave before they made a change. So my high school got a turf football field after even though, I wasn't going to be playing on the turf field anyway, but it was nice to say, hey, our high school is a turf field. Anyways, there's a couple other stateside trips that I think are really good too. Obviously, I've been to Alaska, and some of your students have been on that. That's a great trip. I really enjoyed that one. Did I say? I meant to say Atlanta. Did I say Alaska? I'm sorry. Like, you've never been to Alaska. He's a liar. No, Atlanta. I was looking at you, Amy, for confirmation, and she was like, no. Atlanta. We went on the Atlanta trip. That's a $1,300 trip. That's a really good trip. Definitely possible. I don't really want to open it from different options. We obviously can, but it just gets more complicated. The Alaska trip is a cool trip. That one's more expensive though. That's why I try not to. I don't want to throw too much into the table, but totally. And they could for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Most people paid up to the first payment, which was like $900. Okay, we'd have to look into that. Sure. Yeah. Right. So that's a good question, and that's a question more like into payments. We try not to encourage people to like pay ahead because there might be some scholarship or some fundraising, and we don't include the fundraising stuff till the end. Otherwise, it starts to get really messy early on. And so that's something when it comes to payments, it's easy to say, oh, well, like I'll just pay ahead and I don't want to think about it. But then once the money's into the church and then we send it off, like sometimes it's hard to get those things back, because as soon as kids pay, then we send off a huge check, and then it becomes a complication because, well, that's my money, let me get that back. But sometimes people are given donations, and so when you're given to a church, it's a donation, and then it's tax deductible. So there's some legal things that come into play. Let's just say Jen paid a $600 payment. She wrote that check. We have no idea how whoever made that payment came up with that money. Did family donate to that person, and then that person, right? So obviously we take people's word for it. Like, oh no, that was my. So then a lot of times we'll make it work. But if a bunch of people donated to the church, which is how usually people want to do it, they want to donate to the church for Zach's trip so that they can get a tax write-off. That's where it gets complicated to then say, well, give me my $900 back. I'm like, well, how did that all come in? Our church doesn't care. Like, we're not making money on these payments. We're not taking a slice off of these. We don't care. It's just a complication and legal reasons. Did I answer your question even? What was your original question? I'm kind of going back. If you had leftovers, where does that go? Totally. Yes. A lot of the times, it depends on what leftovers are you referring to. If you're referring to leftovers from fundraisers, that just stays in the AIM account, and then we divvy that up the next year. Or we use it to buy walking taco ingredients for a fundraiser, right? It'll just stay in. If it's like their money, we've done check requests and given people refunds and stuff like that if they have leftovers. But usually what we tell people is, because of the complications of everything I just explained and didn't answer your question, because of that, we say don't overpay because we don't want you to lose your money. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. So when it gets to last payment, wait for us to say, okay, like you earned this much money, you're paying exactly. Sometimes what I've seen happen is a family member will donate $200 to the church, and Joey's already paid for their missions trip. So what happens to that $200? Well, we can't give that money to Joey. We could probably give that, nice try, guys. We could probably give that money back to the family members, because anybody could, especially with text to give, which is great, you you can even just hit refund and that'll come back. We could probably get it back to them, but that's where it gets a little complicated. Usually if there's just random donations or fundraiser money, it just stays in our AIM account, and we just use it next year. Sometimes we'll do like hotel, when we do like, what's it called, Destination Campus or College Conference, when they go to that missions training. Sometimes we can pay for that stuff, and that's great. We just use AIM money. Or missions, we do that missions service. We take an offering. That money sits in our AIM account for the next missions trip. So there's money, like the Yam House concert, there was like $3,000 or whatever we raised on that. There's money that kids have earned for their missions trip. I think, did we do another fundraiser other than that? I don't know if we did. We were planning on it, and then we didn't. And then there's that missions service that we did like a long time ago. So there's money in there for kids. Yes, to the kids going on India. Yep. And that's, yes. Yep. And that's where things get complicated, because this is where we try to, some things, money, it's, I'm not an accountant, but they call it like in and outs. They're in, then they're out, and then when the new year comes, they're gone. So that's why we have to make sure as a church, that we say, okay, like, where's that money? Make sure we transfer that for 2021. So those are things that we do year end. So, and that's where it's helpful to have a better organized youth pastor. But we got those numbers in. Mindy has them, so. No, it's okay. Sure. Yes. When it comes to fundraiser money, we divvy it up. So then if one person drops out, we just re-divvy it up, and everybody else gets more. So, which obviously nobody wants to do that. So, yeah. So, obviously you might have more questions. I have more questions. I was texting and calling Bobby till like 10 last night, because there's just things that I'm like, oh, what about this? What about this? And so I totally understand if you guys have questions, and that's something we want to get those answered early on. I'll reemphasize if you are interested, December 18th it's an online registration. I'll close the live feed off, and I can even show you guys what that looks like. But the online and $200 deposit are all online. Was it one of the trips? Oh, that's disregard that. No, that's just your average date. So. Mm-hmm. Do we just say, hey, I want to go to India, and then register? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Correct. Yep, you're fine. When you go to the online registration, which it's all in Minnesota AIM, and at the very top page, you just click register. I'll show you what it looks like if you guys are interested. You're now going to select whatever trip. And so that's how basically last year's registration, they're gone, right? So those are gone. And because every year, even if we were going to India, we'd still have to register again, just because of, paperwork and all that crap. It only lasted a year, whatever it is. So yeah, good question. I love parents. They have questions. Kids are like, I'm just going. I want to just go. So no questions. Yeah, I know. You did have a good question, though. You guys had some good questions. So we try to, I'm technically not supposed to say yes or no. Like, I'm supposed to say ask your physician, because everybody, even totally. I will probably take medication for Montezuma's Revenge. You know what I mean? I might take that with me. So, yeah, there's no vax that I will take when I go to Mexico. I have to ask Bobby what the rule is on that. I think. Sure. Sure. And that usually is how we do things. When I think about when we go to camp, they have to go to the nurse. Even if they take them out, but they know how it works and stuff, they still have to go to the nurse. So I imagine that's how they would do it. You know, I'm that guy, so I'm like, oh, okay. But so it would probably go to me or to one of our adults that are on the trip, and probably Pam. It's going to go to Pam, most likely. Yeah. Yes. I don't know if you want me administering medication. So, am I supposed to take it with food? I don't know. Just take it and let me know how it goes. No, I'm just kidding. I'm usually a little better than that, but that's pretty close. So, any other questions? We can always take stuff offline too. I just don't want to. So far, we're at a 45-minute live stream, so I'm sure we have a ton of people watching. But okay. Any other questions? They're good. Good questions. Yeah, so there's like fun stuff that's involved with every mission trip. Yeah, they were going to go to the Taj Mahal, and I don't want to talk about it right now. But, yes, there was some really cool. So, it's just, I mean, it was lame stuff. We were just going to a market. Yeah, so it was very comparable. No, I believe our where we're staying is on the beach. It's on the ocean. So most people, they do like their devotions on the beach. So that's really cool. And there's times where we'll go and like, I think they hiked a volcano, which for some people that's fun. For some people that's, it's like, no, like I want to stay on the beach. But so those are just options that are involved with every missions trip. So. Oh, totally. We do check bags for AIM. So that's, everybody gets that AIM bag, and we do, every international trip, we do checked bags. So basically, we just load them up. As long as it's under 50 pounds, I'll measure it. For those of you that have experienced a mission trip with me, they'll come. We usually like try to carpool together to the flight and stuff, and I'll measure everybody's bags before we leave. And usually I put the fear of God in them, so it's like 25 pounds. And I'm like, great, I'm doing you a favor. So that's just how it is. Yeah. Really? Yeah, that's usually how that works. It's like, oh, I got a knife through somehow. How did that work? But, yeah, it's ridiculous. So, okay. I'm going to close the live stream, and if you guys want to talk afterwards, I can also show you the application process. It's pretty straightforward. And for those on the live stream, it's minnesotaaim.com, which obviously Minnesota ends with an A, and then AIM also starts with an A, so it's two A's. Probably more than two A's, but you guys know what I'm saying. minnesotaaim.com. Register before December 18th. I don't know why I keep looking at that, because I actually have a different date there, but, and then that also is the $200 deposit. All right, thanks, guys. I'll close out the stream, and if you guys want to stop, chat afterwards, we totally can. And yeah. Oh, also, if you're planning on signing up, please let me know. This is just a little clipboard, first name, last name, contact information, and live stream. Please contact me if you're planning to sign up for a 2021 mission trip.